All right, how's it going, my dear friends? Here we are, live and rolling, and it's our topical trip. Topical Trip Thursday. It's good to have you. Stefan Maya is my name. AddedSouls.com is the website. I labor alongside the East Coast Church of Christ over here on the East Coast of Canada. You can check out the .com, eastcoastchurchofchrist.com, our Facebook page, East Coast Church of Christ. What is the topic of the day? Well, the title began from a young married husband stating, "Today, I no longer have sex with my wife." A decision he made. And he then publicly explains why he came to that decision. And we will put that statement, that public statement, on the screen, and you and I will read through it, and we will have ourselves a discussion, a conversation, a decent conversation in regards to remedy, in regards to precaution, in regards to points we should utilize in order to prevent a marriage that would cause for one or the other saying that they would no longer honor the marriage bed. How did it come to that? Where did that begin? And so we will look at points from that angle. We will look at the points of those who are within a marriage union dealing with that very real and true challenge, and what can be done, if anything. A practical application to the remedy, if any remedy can be found. And of course, for us Christians, we will speak to that context. Young brethren, young sisters in Christ, young brothers in Christ who get married, some fall prey to the challenges that this young husband publicly wrote. What do you guys think? That okay? He publicly stated that today I will no longer have intimate sexual practices with my wife. And he continues and further in detail explains why. And everything is decent, which is why I also shared this coming podcast on my personal profile and shared the thoughts of this young husband and how he delivered it. Again, no foul language, no filthy discourse or perverted dialect, just explaining how he, as a young husband, is struggling with this moment, and he finally came to the conclusion that it's just best I don't have any sex with my wife. And of course, he reached out to the world, and the world has its answers, if you will. Okay? And the answers the world has is not the answers that are necessary for one to find peace, to be content, self-control, understanding, communication, righteous communication, upright communication, the integrity of the marriage. Like, you're not going to find that in the world. Hollywoodism is not going to give you the solution to any marital problems, struggles, and challenges. It just isn't. So, please, before we get into it, before I open up the issue at hand, the topic, and what this young husband wrote in regards to his wife, please consider subscribing, liking, following, sharing. Drop a comment, share the link far and wide. Maybe there's many others out there who would benefit spiritually from this information, and it may, to a small portion, contribute in a helpful way in their marriage if they are dealing with these similar struggles. And in my experience, my experience is not extensive, but my experience in service, in ministry, since 2011. So I don't know, what's that, 13 years ago? 13 years now in. Again, it's very limited. It's not extensive. It's a short period of time. But I've come across these a great many. Well, many. Many can be subjective, right? It happens more commonly so than we would think. How about that? I'm not saying it's like an epidemic of that is, in the astronomical numeration or anything. It's not there, but it is. It is true and real, and it happens more often than I think we would like to talk about, I guess. Because again, there are some elements here that must be honored in privacy, and because perhaps it is, well, awkward. How do we talk about this, right? It's not comfortable, and it can bring shame, or it can bring disastrous results if it's not handled properly. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, perhaps. These elements, true and well to be discerned. Nonetheless, with all of that, perhaps contributing to the fact that we don't talk about this quite often, it exists. It exists, and many young couples in Christ, young brothers, young sisters in Christ getting married, some of them come across these struggles, these challenges, and if it's not lovingly and properly resolved, can result in some very divisive chaos, some very bitter and twisted, jaded emotions, and ultimately some pretty severe consequences that can ripple in eternal consequence, and so I think it's wise that we have ourselves a session, and a balanced session, that we can reason together with our young brethren who are getting married and going through this. How do we shepherd to them? How do we be a friend to them? How do we fellowship and socialize and contribute? How do we become servants to our brethren who are struggling with this issue? So what we're going to do is put it up on the screen here so you and I can look at what's taking place. Let me see here. There we go. All right, there we go. Please, friends, share this far and wide. Maybe others would like to engage, participate, learn, contribute thoughts, comments, things like that. So here is this young man, and he posts this publicly on Reddit. First and foremost, let me just get this out of the way. I don't think you should ever post this stuff publicly. We can speak about these things in general format publicly, of course, for the greater good of societal unity, and also, of course, for a source in which one can tap into, whether privately or publicly, to perhaps have some tangible fuel helping the marriage be better, okay, than worse. But nonetheless, this would not be something I would have advised this young husband to publicly write. But he did. And perhaps, again, this shows insight into his desperation, feeling perhaps at a loss on what to do next, and loving his wife. He loves his wife. He is emotionally invested in his wife, but seeking remedy to this end. So let's just read what it says. Okay, it opens up and he says, today I gave up sex with my wife. Well, that's pretty sad. That's pretty sad. And he says, this is my version of a story told many times before. Okay, I, being a 27-year-old man, he says, am going to stop initiating sex with my wife, who is 25 years old. Initiating meaning he is the one who in, how should I say, priority is activating perhaps a dialogue or a sense or a sensual sense, a romantic angle that would lure his wife, his partner, into seeking the same like-minded process, which is to engage each other and into a lawful marriage bed in which the blessing of sexual intercourse is available. Okay, so he says the reason I'm not going to do that anymore, because I've been the one doing that. The reason I'm not going to do that anymore is because she never initiates. She's never the one who seeks from me an intimate moment in the marriage bed. She never does that. And so in his mind, of course, that means she's just not interested in me, perhaps, or I'm the one who's okay. So he continues and says, when we do have sex, it's only because I asked, and there is nothing sexy about it. He's probably meaning there's no passion behind it. It's perhaps very mechanical, just a matter of, well, I have to practice my duties, so here's my body, kind of stuff. And I can read the frustration in him, though he is well composed as a young man writing these things. If you look at many other young men in the world out there in the secular mind frame or landscape, they typically don't speak this well, if you will, in regards to their marriage challenges. So big up to this young man here for at least not utilizing filthy or perverted or foul discourse in his explanation. So he says, it's only because I asked and there is nothing sexy about it. That's why his wife, reluctantly, it almost seems, does what she is asked to do. All of my sweet talk, he says, subtle gestures, etc., get me nowhere. All my attempts as a male, as a husband who loves his wife, seeking to have those moments with her, seems to no avail. It seems to fall on deaf ears. Speaking to the wall, I might as well just do these things to the wall. It's the same thing. He says, I absolutely understand that sex is not the be-all, end-all. Okay, so he gets that much, and that's a much that is good to get. Okay, the marriage union should not revolve around one sole source activity, being sex. Now, obviously, sex is a major portion of one's marriage, more so in the earlier years of that union. But, yeah, he understands that, okay, just because, like, sex should not be the only reason I married her, and sex should not be the only reason I stay married to her, right? So you see, he understands there's a priority of things, and there is many other facets in a marriage in order to be healthy, or to be healthy, and just because sex would not be available does not mean that the marriage cannot be healthy in its mutual sacrifice towards one another, thoughtfulness and selflessness and things like that. So he says, I absolutely understand that sex is not the be-all, end-all. And he continues and says, we are extremely compatible, and she is my best friend. So the proper components are operational, and we are indeed close to one another. We know each other in a great many ways through perhaps personality and common interest, perhaps. They are friends, okay? And they are compatible with one another. They in his estimation, find each other attractive, perhaps, and things like that. And he continues and he says, I've heard the phrase, quote, my partner feels more like a roommate. And that has helped me understand what I am feeling. Okay, so we're just here helping each other pay the board, try not to get in each other's way when we go to the kitchen, the washroom. We're roommates. We can be friendly with one another. We may even be friends. But that's as far as it goes. And obviously, a roommate is not the same engagement. You don't hold the same engagement with a roommate as you would with a husband or wife. There are certain mutual or certain common aspects too, perhaps living with your husband and wife, as should be the case, that may resemble one who has a roommate, obviously, who's just helping pay rent or pay board or pay mortgage or whatever. But husband and wife needs to be more than just the roommate side of things, okay? This is not a mechanical business agreement where we sign the contract and say, okay, you pay half of this and I'll pay half of that, and we'll just learn to get along and not get in each other's way. What a sad, idle union that would be. And there are many who fall prey to that kind of engagement, that kind of a union. He continues and says, she has expressed before that sex doesn't hold the same value in a relationship that I believe it does. So she has expressed this. I'm curious, has she expressed this before marriage or only once marriage had been activated? It's important. We'll talk a bit more about that in regards to knowing who you should marry, right? If we utilize discernment prior to the lifelong commitment and covenant institution, divine institution of marriage, if before that moment we say I do, we have the opportunity, and we should create that opportunity if it's not made available, to know our partner, our to-be wife or to-be husband. Even in these conversations, I mean, you may be setting yourself up for some problems. Okay? She has expressed before that sex doesn't hold the same value in a relationship that I believe it does. Now, we're going to assume that this is pure and that they have been pure, but most are not, obviously, in this fallen world. Even those who profess belief, even the children of parents who have grown up in the church, statistically are now showing that the majority just do not remain pure. Virgins, right? No, they don't. That causes a problem already from the get-go. What about their minds? Has lust found itself in their hearts? Unrighteous lust, adultery in their hearts, fornication in their hearts, meaning has this young husband been contaminated by pornography? Because if she hasn't, if the wife has not, if this young woman has not viewed or engaged or habitually practiced pornographic material, viewed pornographic material, like if her mind has not been contaminated, perverted with pornography, habitual weeks, months, years with pornography, and he has, there's going to be a problem. It's an inevitable, objective absolute in the marriage. It's going to cause a challenge and a struggle. Now, that's another angle. We're going to assume that both have not. Both are pure in mind. They're not getting married after having watched 5 years of pornography, stuff like that. Okay, they're pure. They remained pure. They were virgins. At this point, anyways, this is what we're going to assume, the greater good of this condition. But again, there is indeed a need for the pocket conversation of if one of them is addicted to, habitually watches, or has watched for a long period of time pornography, and the other hasn't, there is going to be a problem when it comes to intimacy within the marriage. It's an inevitable truth. It just is. Now, you can navigate through it and you can find remedy. There is remedy. There is answer for young Christian couples in that situation. Okay, why? Well, let's say the husband habitually has watched pornography prior to his marriage. Perhaps he still is viewing pornography. Perhaps it's something that he has not changed away from. Okay, well, he's going to have a very, how should I say, a very corrupted worldview, a very corrupted image of sexual activity in the marriage. Okay, he just is. He's going to believe in his mind that sexual activity in the marriage should look like what he has been viewing in pornography. And of course, the greater bulk of pornography in its major category is not a husband and wife making love, participating in love, which is a very intimate, passionate, mutual intercourse. But more so, what they will have in their image is the mechanical, worldly lust, where the woman has become an object of sexual lust. And when his wife, is not going to be able to feel that dopamine rush, that very raw sexual activity, he's going to find himself at a loss. He's going to find himself perhaps at a point where unrighteous emotional paths become his mind, and bitterness and anger and withdrawal, and again, a great many other negative things. That's a reality. Okay, and it's the same for the wife. If the husband is a pure-minded man who is not habitually involved with pornographic material, his idea is pure and genuine and very innocent. He is seeking to make love with his wife. But his wife is contaminated by habitual pornographic material, and so in her mind, her husband is a sexual object that should fulfill her worldly lust. And you're going to find yourself in an impasse, a location in which there seems to be no bridge to be built. And that leads, of course, to adultery or separation and unrighteous divorce or things like that. And we don't want that for our young married couples. Anyway, a bit of an excursion there, but to the point. You need to understand that. And our youth need to understand that. Stay away from pornography. And do not marry an individual who is high-handedly, habitually involved in viewing pornography. Okay? So, it continues and says she has expressed before that sex doesn't hold the same value in a relationship that it does. Okay, she just doesn't seem to have the inner passion to be with him in that measurement, which hurt to hear, he says, but I have to respect her opinion. Again, I would have strongly urged these two, male and female here, to have this conversation prior to saying I do. Now, I know that can be challenging, no doubt, to navigate through, because you don't want to permit your mind to go in a location of unrighteousness with the woman you're about to marry. So it needs to be held in a very self-controlled manner. But this can be taught, this can be learned, and this can be activated. There needs to be that conversation, not to the point that leads to fornication, of course, no. But there needs to be at least a perhaps very lighthearted conversation prior to marriage. Like, what are your thoughts on sex? We are adults. Our parents, they obviously had sex. You and I exist. What are your thoughts? Well, strictly procreation. Well, then we have a problem. So again, it's a conversation that I perhaps should have been had prior to the covenant. And he continues and he says, before you comment, talk to her. I can assure you I have. So he's already anticipating a great many people just saying, well, just communicate with your wife, have a conversation with her. And he says, well, I have. We have had this discussion about every 6 months, where I admit that I am sexually frustrated. He doesn't feel fulfilled in his sexual desire. And male or female, again, that can cause some turmoil in the union. And, well, we don't want that turmoil. It's not necessary. However, he finds himself in this situation. We have had this discussion about every 6 months, where I admit that I am sexually frustrated, and I want to talk about this in a completely neutral environment. Okay? Normally, he says, the conversation leads to her crying, and I apologize. Or she says she will be more open to initiating, which never happens. I'm ashamed, he says, to bring this to Reddit. At least, to his credit, he knows this is probably not the best place to air out this very private dilemma, okay? So he feels shame that he has to go here publicly. But I need a third-party opinion. He's desperate. He's seeking some advice. He says, I love my wife very much, and I'm hurting. So he is desperate, seeking a solution here. I mean, he's 27, she's 25. That is young. When I was 27, I thought I was old and knew all things. No. I'm still a kid, in my opinion now, at almost 48 years old. 20 years ago, yeah. I still had much to learn. He isn't, obviously they are not children, but they are indeed still young in the information and the challenge they are facing. Okay, so what do we do about that? Let's have a conversation about that. A young man, he's 27, a young woman, she's 25. They are married together. Her her sex drive is not as strong as his, right? That's his, seems to be his the issue there in the marriage. And she has vocally expressed this to him, like, I don't have that thing that you have. How can he deal with this? What can happen here? Now, before moving forward, please understand, there are married couples who cannot have those intimate moments together sexually because of unchangeable outside sources, if you will, like health condition. Like, if health is a wall, a health issue becomes a wall in which they cannot engage in sexual practice. I mean, they husband and wife have to learn to greater amplify other moments or other interactions in their marriage. They have to learn self-control and not find themselves going to pornography or physical adultery, nor not adultery within the heart, and not adultery practiced outwardly as well. And that is a challenge, no doubt. If a middle-aged married couple have been having a very healthy sexual lifestyle, and a very devastating accident or disease or health moment comes about, which has them no longer capable of that intimacy, it can be a very devastating moment in their marriage, and some leave. We've seen that. We've ministered to these accounts, these witnessed accounts, these accounts close to us. Perhaps some in the local assembly, some in friends and family, coworkers, neighbors, where one of the partner goes through a stroke and is no longer capable of contributing his or her portion of the sexual activities. And the husband just can't take it, and he leaves. He leaves her and just goes after another woman who can. These are real life moments, and they are harsh, but that they happen. And couples have to navigate through that. Now, obviously, we can have a series of podcast sessions that address all of these, which I think is necessary. And I'm not saying I'm the expert here who should do that. I'm far from it. I'm just sharing some of my insights, some of my experience in ministry and in my own personal life in a great many ways, in my past life and things like that, right? But that happens, okay? So that's not the context of our conversation today. The context of our conversation is this young couple, 27-year-old man, husband, 25-year-old female wife. She doesn't like to have sex all that much. It's not a thing for her. He, obviously, in the young male, testosterone guided mind and lust for his wife, wants to have sex. He wants to have it probably quite often. She don't want that. What do I do? I've tried everything. I tried to talk to her. It doesn't change anything, right? Well, again, you have to look into several factors. Has there been any trauma? Number one, has there been any trauma in her life? Has she been abused when she was young or at any time? Has she been violated, abused? That needs to that's a conversation. If she has, there's a reason perhaps she's not comfortable with sexual desire or practice. Okay, it's not the fault of the husband. It can be, depending again on various perspectives and conversation, but it's not his fault. Generally speaking, she with him have to kind of talk this out. And how can we cultivate this relationship sexually, knowing that you have gone through some traumatic, devastating, awful, horrifying abuse as a child or as a teenager or as a young adult, whatever, from family member or whoever. Like, how do you... Because some who have been abused, men and women, some will hermit themselves away from any sexual desire or sexual activity. Others will amplify their sexual desire and activities. So that's a conversation to be had. Has your wife been abused? No, she hasn't. Does she have a decent familial background? Her parents, are they together? Is it a healthy home? I mean, all homes struggle with various things. No one is perfect, right? I mean, there's always going to be some arguments and some moments, some seasons that are more peaceful than others or not as peaceful as others. But in general, was she loved? Did her parents love each other? Things like that. I mean, that's a conversation to be had, right? Well, if all things seem to be healthy and it is something just purely in her mind that she doesn't have that active passion for sexual activity, then there are a few things he has to do. One, he has to learn self-control. And when he has an intrusive thought, a sexual desire, he sees her perhaps in a manner in which the male mind begins to lust at her, he has to immediately shut that off and learn how to do that. Nope, not the time to think about that. Think of something else. Immediately go to a distraction of sorts, away from that. So that is one remedy. That is one solution to learn a deeper self-control. As a 27-year-old man, I want to have sex 3 times a day, right? Well, maybe it'll only be possible once every few days, once a day, once a week. Okay, you have to look at those limitations, of course. With her cooperation, you have to learn the self-control. And also, another angle to it is perhaps she's never attained the climax of a truly passionate love making experience. Okay? Again, we're keeping things decent here. It is a bit mature, no doubt. But if she's never truly experienced that strong bond in the marriage bed, where she's not just a sex object to fulfill the man's desires and the lustful desire, but rather a mutual, very close and passionate climax. Perhaps she just doesn't see why she should participate in giving her body to her husband that way if she's not herself had that climax, that moment where she's like, whoa, that was so special. We gave each other something that we've never given anyone else. And that is so special. And of course, God is a wise God. He created us to find pleasure in that activity within the confines of a lawful marriage. Okay? He gave us that activity so that it would be pleasurable for us to share with one another. Not only, of course, in procreation, but as a mutual two becoming one. And so if one of the partners, the husband or wife, has not yet attained that fulfillment, he or she might not see the use in having sex. Okay? So perhaps he, in the common slang of the street dialect, maybe needs to up his game. Maybe he needs to up his game. Maybe he needs to put in a bit more effort than, I am this and I want that to be done now. Well, maybe she does need the bed of roses and some sweet essence in the air and candles and some Barry Manilow on the radio. I mean, you love her. Be a man. Be a man and take her and have her feel like a woman. Have her know she's a woman. That at times is a point to be recognized. And a husband needs to learn that, and a wife as well. Perhaps the woman, the wife, her engagement or her, luring to the marriage bed is through some romantic path. And perhaps for the male, it's a bit different. It doesn't need all that romance. It just needs what the world calls the sexy. Okay? Perhaps she just needs to learn for her husband to be sexy for her husband, and he needs to learn how to be romantic to his wife. These are things that certainly would qualify as practical applications to remedy their situation. Scripturally speaking, of course, to the very inspired word itself, we're going to put that up on the screen here for a moment, okay? Because that'll also give us a bit of insight here taking place. And there is context to what is happening here. And friends, please consider subscribing, following, liking, sharing, drop a comment, share the link far and wide. Many others out there may benefit from this information, may want to have a conversation with us in regards to this information. I think it's important. And we want to do all we can as influencers, as online content creators, as ministers, as teachers, as preachers. We wanted to do all we can to contribute to the greater good of a union remaining together. Because I assure you, the devil's going to do everything it can to destroy it. We're speaking about a young husband, he's 27. A young wife, she's 25. She's not participating or wanting to participate with him in sexual practice. And he wants more of that, and he can't get it. So he's desperate. He's seeking help. Okay, that's the context of our session today. And we're going to go to the scriptures here and read a bit of what Paul had to say to the Corinthians. Now, there is context here. It wasn't a time, a season, of course, of great danger for Christian faith and various things. I encourage you on your own time and dime, go ahead and study the inner context of this chapter, this book, and why Paul was saying the things he is saying. But there is a principle within the verses we're going to share, nonetheless, that are true and real. And he says in verse 3 of chapter 7, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 3, 4, and 5, right? Okay. The husband, verse 3, should give to his wife her conjugal rights. He should. Now, again, I mean, why do our children, like our young teens, perhaps, young adults, why are our children coming to church on Sunday? To be with the church, to be the church, to worship God. Why are they here with us on Sunday? Because we told them we'd give them a good beating if they don't? Or are they here? Are they learning to grow their inner independent faith? Like, do they want to follow Jesus? Do they love God on their own merit and credibility, their own independent faith? Or are they told, if you don't, you're going to have a gun to your head, kind of thing? Does the wife within her heart seek to give her body in love to her husband? Or is it one of these, hey, it's time for your conjugal duty. Come here, wife. Is it mechanical? Is it void of any warmth, any heat? The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights. Well, she should want to. That's the point. Should. It's better than has to, and you better do it or else. She should want to feel that very comfort with her husband. And likewise, the wife to her husband, okay? Husband to wife, wife to husband. For the wife does not have authority over her body, but the husband does. But again, keep things in their proper context. Come here, wife. Do as you're told, wife. Give me sexual pleasure, wife. Well, hey, man, listen, I don't think that's going to work out for you, okay? Now, it may, if it's found in the passion of, and only in the passion of a mutual conversation in which the husband and wife, the wife and husband both communicate with each other that way. Hey, wife, I feel a certain way. Want to go do something? Oh, yeah, okay, let's do that. Well, okay, fine. If that works that way, that's perfect. But you understand, I think, what we're trying to explain here. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. She should be willing to give her body to her husband. Not reluctantly, not grudgingly, not because, well, I have to, I guess I'm his wife, and that's just what I have to do. No, learn why you want to do that and why you want to do that as often as you can before a greater portion or a greater amount of responsibility become your priority in marriage. Children, career, okay? For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. There's equality here. The husband should be willing. Again, we're not speaking about moments in which the husband is having a health issue or is sick to the point where, he's in bed with a fever and he's throwing up. I mean, maybe it's not the time to go ask the guy. Now, that depends. Okay? Some husbands who are sick maybe seek to have intimacy with their wives still. I mean, that's a lot of subjectivity here. But again, typically, if the wife or the husband is severely sick and going through a moment like that, I don't think it's the time to say, hey, your body's mine, so give it up. That wouldn't be wise. All right, young men, young ladies, just learn that. And he says in verse 5, do not deprive one another. Don't deprive one another. Now that would enter into a very, how should I say, a very dangerous location of the union if one is depriving the other. He said something I didn't like. He did something I didn't like. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep my body away from him. Oh, no. Don't think that that's okay. That's really not. That's a problem. That's a problem. And there is conversation to be had if, again, pending on case-per-case situation and account, that could be sinful. Right? Do not deprive one another. That would be, again, void of all things that would be understandable why you can't come together to be one. Okay? Not talking about those things. We're talking about someone who is high-handedly saying, I'm going to punish him in one way or another to get my way, manipulation of sorts. So I'm going to keep my body away from him. Some women marry weak men from simply showing them their body features. You don't want to get into a marriage that way. How is she as a person? Oh, why did you marry her? Well, she's just like, smoking hot. And, well, she's just smoking hot. Yeah? That's it? Is that enough? No. You're going to find that out the hard way, buddy. Okay. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time. Okay? So you do not high-handedly deprive your husband or wife. Don't do that. It's going to cause a problem. And why would you want to do that? That stems to a deeper issue. If you are high-handedly wanting to keep your body away from your husband or wife, that there's a greater issue at hand here. Before we even talk about sex, I think we need to go to the root cause of why you would even want to keep sex away from your husband or wife. Like, what's going on? Okay? Except perhaps by agreement for a limited time. You can't have sex all the time. I know when we are young, we kind of sought to do that. But it's just not, it's not practical. And there are times where self-control perhaps should be practiced, and as young Christian man, young Christian woman, husband, wife, need to take their time spiritually in prayer. That you may devote yourselves in prayer. Why? To keep each other pure and to keep each other's thoughts pure towards one another. But then come together again. Well, how long does that take? How long can you go out? How long can you go without food? Well, no, yeah. All right. All right. Well, figure it out. So that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. It's very well written. It's inspired. What do you know? It's very well written. You should want to give each other's bodies in mutual intimacy. You should want to do that. You should want to give your body to your husband. You should want to explore that. Okay? You should want to explore that. Well, it's gross to me. Okay, why is it gross? Is it a matter of, how should I say, what do you call that? A matter of bathing. Maybe you need to be clean, take a shower. That's a thing. Maybe that's it. Yeah, that's it. Okay, well, then before you come together as one, take a shower. What is? Well, it's gross to me. Well, what do you mean it's gross to you? Well, just coming together that way. Okay, how can we unlearn that? Because we're gonna have to unlearn that perspective to sexual intercourse as a lawful marriage. And learn to embrace and explore and adventure and find the joy and pleasure therein. There are many angles to approach this that are decent, that are mutual, and sometimes husbands and wives, they don't always want to make love in a romantic, deep, passionate way. Sometimes husbands and wives just want to have a very lustful sex episode. Well, learn to cultivate all those branches in decency, in respect towards one another. Again, I'm speaking, I have to repeat this because this has to do within the context and confines of our session here, which is a young husband, 27 years old, and a young wife, 25. Okay, who are, from our assumption, eligible and lawful and pure, and she just doesn't have this desire to sexual activity, and he does. And how can they, like, where's the bridge to be built? How can we have this work here, right? Well, there's obviously going to need some righteous compromise and self-control and the willingness to try things. And so the instruction is quite prudent, it's wise, it's inspired. Husbands, your body belongs to your wives. Wives, your body belongs to your husbands. Give each other willfully. Share each other willfully. Come together in those moments. And this, of course, remains true within a union throughout the decades. The young couple, married together, still no children, have all their days and time to come together as one. But again, like I mentioned, then children come in. And career and greater responsibilities, you don't have that time to come together. Oh, no, you need to make that time. And I assure you, it's possible. Even if your calendar is filled to the brim with all sorts of responsibilities and priorities, all that, you can still make time for your wife. And you have to remember that though we are mommy and daddy, we are husband and wife. At times, you must withdraw from the mommy and daddy office and role and the hat. Put that hat aside there on the hanger for a bit and get some husband and wife time. But that's for another session. We remain within the confines of this young couple here who are seeking desperately some resolve. Okay? And the resolve is this. And, well, we've been speaking about it, I guess. What I would say to this young couple is the things I've been sharing with all of you. If there is no abuse that has been had or no medical condition or no, like if it's healthy and pure and she just doesn't want to, then she has to learn how to. And the reason and how she's going to learn and how she's going to learn how to is by the husband having self-control, patience, and being a man. Like, let's just put this out there. In today's culture, men are very effeminate. They really are. And so the women are starving for a manly man that they haven't married. They shouldn't have married an effeminate man to that end. And again, I'm not seeking to offend. I know some men are a bit more or less masculine, I suppose, but you understand the language. Speaking to Christian minds here, a husband has to be the male lead. He has to have that confidence to give and share and deliver a pleasurable moment. She has to reach that climax and be able to truly experience the value of that beautiful blessing in a lawful marriage. And sometimes, guys, sometimes you have to put your pride aside and you just ask her, what can I do to give you pleasure? What is it? Always within the confines of decency. What can I do? I want to do because I want to, because I love you. And it's pleasurable to me to be able to accurately give you pleasure. It's the same vice versa, especially in a lawful union of a young couple who have kept themselves pure. They are virgins. They have the wonderful blessing of exploring each other's bodies and sexual desires and lust for one another in a very pure way. But sometimes that takes conversation. Like, ooh, don't do that. That hurts. Ooh, don't do that. I don't find that attractive. Oh, have that conversation. Keep it decent, obviously, and private, no doubt. But these are things that will help your marriage flourish. Learning each other. Because ultimately, my dear friends, you and I know who have lived on this earth long enough and have been married, ultimately, having sex kind of drops every so decade to the point where perhaps it's just not something practiced anymore. And that's okay because so many other wonderful things have taken precedence, right? So that's pretty much, in a nutshell, some impromptu thoughts to what we have read from that young man who did so publicly. And again, I would strongly advise against doing that, but I understand his desperation. And to his credit, he has said, I feel so shamed having to speak this publicly. But a great many of these things, and you can't cover it all within an hour session, man. Come on, But perhaps some of these thoughts, some of the practical applications we've pointed out may benefit this kind of a union. Okay? And there would be there could be a series on various angles of marriage that could be spoken about, right? And I think we touched just briefly on some of those, but yeah. If all things, she needs to learn how to how she should want to seek to give her body to her husband and be pleasurable to her husband more than she is, and shouldn't be, and he has to maybe back off from the I want it 3 times a day. Now, in every blue moon shooting star moment, you may find yourself in a husband and wife situation where both parties are at the same sexual desired moment. Like he wants it 3 times a day, she wants it 3 times a day. Okay, no issues there. But most times that's just not the case. Okay? Most times that's not the case. You have to navigate through that. And you have to navigate through that properly. Now, in conclusion here, we're just going to mention the the don't do's of the world. This individual here, this young man, he sent that out publicly. Well, what do you think the reply was? Find another wife, divorce her, cheat on her, have a polygamous relationship, marry another, all kinds of just nonsense. And that's what the world's going to teach our kids as a remedy, quote unquote, to such a situation if we don't teach them properly. We teach our kids. I mean, maybe it's easier for us. I'm French. Didn't we invent sex or something? Us French, Well, the children, of course, are not raised with, ew, they're raised with, that's something I long to practice. However, in a lawful marriage. Therefore, I want to make sure I marry the right person. That's so important. I've delivered numerous podcast sessions in regards to the precaution. Know who you are marrying before you marry the person. Don't marry someone who you know is going to get you into a whole bunch of problems. Well, what if it began very well, but then throughout the years things happened, and well, that's a different conversation, obviously. But there was something. Okay, man, I don't know what else to say about this. That's about it. I love you all greatly. I appreciate you all a great deal. Stefan Maillet is my name. AddedSouls.com is the website. I labor alongside the East Coast Church of Christ over here on the East Coast of Canada. You can check out the .com, eastcoastchurchofchrist.com. You can check out our Facebook page, East Coast Church of Christ. Reach out to us if you'd like to have a conversation, if you'd like to have articles or things along those lines to this conversation. And be sure to subscribe, like, follow, share. There are others out there like you and I. We have to do the legwork to get the algorithm waving to our side, right? Stay focused and stay positive. We shall certainly see each other again next time. Remember, friends, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. Atlantic Daylight Time. Spread the word out there. This podcast session is active. Peace out.